One, we had a really great question in the Germany Medicine Self-Healing Support Group. So we thought we'd come on and answer the question live, offer some advice. You saw the title is How to Let the Past Be the Past. This person had a very thoughtful question. You know, she has changed so much about her life since learning GNM. You know, she says she looks at her health from a different perspective. She treats her children differently. You know, she's managed to identify the conflicts that she's had throughout her life, but she finds herself struggling. She finds herself still very emotional and still experiencing symptoms from these various conflicts in her life. And she wanted advice like, you know, I feel like I'm at peace with it. I feel like I've forgiven people. I feel like I've let things go, but I'm having flashbacks and I can't seem to really release these conflicts and move forward with my life and let the past be the past. And so we wanted to offer some helpful advice for this person and anyone else who might be in a similar situation.
Yeah, so just to kind of begin and give a little context, just want to recap some of the more salient aspects of what this person shared. Basically, they had traumatic things going on in their childhood where they felt maybe abandoned by their parents, or they were, you know, they understand now why that happened, but it still kind of bothers them. You know what I'm saying? They've come to peace with it and everything and all this, and they've moved on for their emotional well-being, but it's still there. They still feel the effects of that, and they're aware that that's probably a part of their. So I still haven't moved on from those feelings, even though they've kind of formally resolved it. There's still that kind of lingering sensation. Now, this is really interesting what they said here. Most importantly, I'm having flashbacks, and many of them. This started since I've always been analyzing what and why I'm sick. Now, really interesting here, this is a pretty common thing for people who, like, we just did an awareness challenge, and sometimes people who are doing this, part of what this thing involves is that you check in pretty frequently to notice certain things about your experience, to notice what you're thinking about or how you're thinking about it, to notice what you're feeling, notice what you're doing. You kind of like categorize it, and you sort of say, is it this or is it this? Is it serving me? Is it not? So on and so forth. And there's always at least one person in every awareness challenge, and sometimes there'll be a couple who report, you know, it was great, I was making progress, but I got so stressed out. I was feeling so bad. I was feeling so depressed or so anxious or overwhelmed that I had to stop. Or they'll say that the exercise was making me feel that way. And it's almost always that what's happening is it's not the becoming aware. It's not the seeing yourself think these things or feel these things that's stressing you out. It's almost always unconscious and unintentional, automatic, habitual responses or reactions to discovering things about yourself or things that you're doing that you feel you shouldn't be doing, that you think you aren't supposed to be doing, that aren't really pleasant to notice, and so on and so forth. So we need awareness to create positive change in our life. That's a very general principle. Now, part of and awareness is very powerful because you can't do what doesn't serve you and do it with awareness. So if I'm doing something, if I'm thinking a thought, or if I'm devaluing myself, or if I'm giving some meaning to some event or some person's behavior in my life that isn't serving me, if I can bring that process into my awareness, which is to say, if I can see myself doing it in real time as I'm doing it, if that's not serving me, so like if I'm saying, for example, oh, so-and-so canceled our date, that must mean I'm unlovable. If I can actually watch myself assign that meaning to the fact that this person canceled our date, I'm going to say, wait a minute. No wonder I'm feeling like crap. No wonder I'm feeling so bad. No wonder I'm experiencing myself. I'm telling myself this thing means something that, one, it doesn't serve me to tell myself that it means, and two, almost certainly doesn't, right? So I can't do things that don't serve me and do them in awareness. One thing about this, though, as a person becomes more aware, most people who are unconsciously and unintentionally running their life, letting their mind kind of run off wherever, you know, doing its own thing, it's like children who are unattended. It's like, you know, if you take the average child and you leave them unattended for a long period of time, probably going to get into mischief. You leave the average adult untended for a certain period of time, but probably, like, you know, you leave me alone, you're going to come back and there's going to be some crazy projects going on or some stuff, right? And our minds work that way too. It's not possible for me to do what doesn't serve me and do it with awareness. And kind of the inverse of that is that it is possible for me to do all kinds of things that don't serve me if I'm doing those things outside of my awareness. And so as a person goes through the process of becoming more aware, of noticing more and more about their creative process, about the thoughts they're thinking, about their kind of habits of feeling, about meaning assignment, beliefs, about, about things in their past, how often they think about those things, how they think about those things, the role that their thoughts about those things play in their present moment experience. As you begin to notice all of this, probably you're going to notice a lot of things that are happening that aren't serving you. And that's good, right? Because as something that is, so here's my awareness inside this circle. Outside of that circle are things that don't serve me. As my awareness expands, those things are in my awareness. So I see myself doing what doesn't serve me. All of a sudden, these negative aspects of my experience are less of a mystery. They don't seem to be just happening. I'm doing this and that feels bad kind of thing. A lot of people, what they tend to do is when they see themselves doing something that doesn't serve them, they have a reflexive reaction to that, which is self-criticism, self-castigation, judgment, saying, oh my God, I've got to stop this. How am I going to force myself to stop this? Oh my God, there's so many things I'm doing that aren't serving me. How am I going to fix them all? It's as if everything that they're doing that isn't serving them, that comes into their awareness, it adds to this to-do list that has to be done already, and it's not. And they get kind of freaked out and they get distracted from the process of becoming aware and the process of just kind of letting themselves kind of grow out of these patterns. They think they have to fix them rather than just really becoming aware of them, seeing that they don't serve, and then allowing kind of like their whole self to kind of recognize that.
And I think that's especially relevant when we're looking at things from the G&M perspective, and you've got a person who's starting to see, okay, there's a role I'm playing in this. There's a conflict that is at the root of this biological process. So these symptoms that I'm having, there's a conflict that is causing it, and you start to see it. And if you stop early in the process, or you stop in that stage where you're like, you see it and then you're like, oh no, this is it, this is the thing, but you don't feel like you're able to resolve it, that can in and of itself create a conflict, because you feel like here's this thing here, I have all of this stuff from my past, I've got all of this past trauma, I've got all of this, all of these things that I don't fully understand how fully they've influenced how I see myself, the world, and other people right here and right now, but I know that they're doing something, and I know that they're causing physical problems, and that in and of itself for some people can be such a, they could experience powerlessness or another conflict because of the fact that they now see one connection. They now see that there are things in their, in their past conflict, biological conflicts they've had. They've got response patterns that are set up right now, but they don't know what to do to resolve it. It seems to be the situation that this person is in, is like, what do I do now? I've got all of this. I have a lot of the pieces. I'm making a lot of my decisions moving forward about how I, deal with my kids and help my kids, based on this new paradigm and worldview and way of understanding, what's always been going on with the human body. But there are still things from my past that seem to be dragging along, and I've done forgiveness and I feel like, I've let them go, but why are the feelings still there? Why am I still having, these flashbacks? I'm trying to think about, okay, I just had a cold. She says, when I analyze when I'm sick. So, and this is what we do in G&M. If you have, the flu, or you lost your voice, or you're retaining water, you have hemorrhoids or back pain, or you're craving sweets, you're like, okay, what's the G&M perspective of this? Okay, a resistance conflict, a fear conflict, a stink conflict, there's something there. But she's saying every time, ever since I started analyzing what was it that caused my conflicts, I'm having all sorts of flashbacks to, it's like your brain is just kind of serving up. It's like, oh, it could be this scary thing. It could be this thing. It could be this thing that happened. And you can get caught in a cycle of doing things in a way that doesn't serve to resolve the conflict, and unfortunately tends to perpetuate old conflicts and cause new conflicts.
It's interesting. This is an overall kind of pattern level tendency that people have when it comes to information. So a lot of people, when they hear something like G&M, okay, so my health situation, if my health is completely out of my hands, if it's genetic or if it's random or if it's whatever, I might be really unhappy about the fact that I'm experiencing a symptom or that I have a condition or whatever. but there's not really much for me to do except for maybe worry about the fact that there's nothing that I can do. But if I have a certain pattern of relating to information, and we won't get into the details, but so for example, if I tend to relate to things in terms of necessity rather than opportunity. Every time someone tells me something, my default kind of brain processing says, all right, given what they're telling me, what do I have to do? It's very different than saying, given what they're telling me, what can I do? If I tend to relate to information in that way, and I stumble upon a school of thought like German New Medicine that says, this stuff that's going on in your body, it's not random. It's actually the body intentionally doing something in response to an emotional experience that you've had in your past, a kind of biological level interaction with your environment. Basically, how you feel is important, and what you're doing and the states that you're creating matter a whole lot. If a person who tends to sort by necessity hears that, they can freak themselves out because they start saying, oh my God, I have to account for every feeling, every time I have a little ache, I got to find out exactly what it was, and I've got to, oh my God. And it's, I call this like grabbing the sword by the blade, grabbing the tool by the business end, right, rather than by the handle. You'll hurt yourself. If I try to hold a drill by the bit and then I turn it on or something like that, it's not going to work properly and it's going to cause me pain. I think another example of it would be jumping into a fire rather than getting close enough to allow it to warm me comfortably or allow me to do something with it. I'm diving into it, and we have sometimes a tendency to kind of become overwhelmed by information. And that overwhelm is if I have a problem in my life and I investigate different things that I could do to kind of solve that problem, very often the things that interfere with my ability to effectively use those tools to resolve my issue, very often the patterns that cause that issue, that problem, are the very same patterns that are creating the initial problem in my life in the first place. I'm very overwhelmed with everything that's in my life, and I go and try to learn something to help me deal with this overwhelm, but then I get overwhelmed by all of the stuff that I need to do in order to deal with my overwhelm, and then I get overwhelmed about that. It's a pattern of the individuals relating to the stuff that they come into contact with. Doesn't mean it's their fault. It's just an unseen, very subtle element of information processing. How do I relate? Because isn't that interesting? It's how I relate to my environment that gives rise to what my experience of that environment is. And as soon as information about how I can relate more resourcefully to my environment comes into my environment, I'm going to relate to that information probably in much the same way that I relate to the rest of my environment, which if that's causing me problems to look for information about how to relate more resourcefully to it, probably I'm going to relate less than resourcefully to that information that could teach me how to relate more resourcefully. And so the ability to just kind of like relax this and mentioning this is a person I can tell that they're very intelligent and they have that not just like intellectual, but they have that like kind of like emotional intelligence. They have that insight into themselves, and I think a genuine kind of desire to figure out what's going on. Sometimes there are people who are so kind of caught up in the lifestyle of their problems that a part of them is almost maybe afraid of moving out of it, or they're deriving significance from it in some way, even if they don't mean to. But this isn't going on with this person. I think that they're someone who's making a good faith effort to like do everything that they need to do. The threshold, though, for diminishing returns when it comes to insight or when it comes to like analysis, well, is my runny nose because of that or because I have found that the threshold for diminishing returns is very low. You start going down rabbit holes, you're getting lost, you end up creating a sensation of being lost or a hopelessness. The few people who have had negative or not really satisfying experiences with G&M as we kind of teach it and do this stuff, they are people who I know have a tendency to rush down the rabbit hole really fast and default into that kind of unconscious analysis. Very often what I want to do, and every time we have had insights into like what caused something that was going on with us, there is a revelatory element to it, which is to say I don't arrive at it by pondering. I don't necessarily arrive at it by like, these old things in elementary school pictures, there'd be like a little kid and he'd have his tongue sticking out because he was like working really hard on something. It's like the kids like working to do the puzzle and they always stick their tongue out when they're focusing really hard. It doesn't come from that kind of like strain and effort. Well, was it this or was it that? Or when I was 8, da-da-ba-da-da. It's just sort of, it's sort of like a garden. When you cultivate a garden, you do some work. If you're in Resolve, you're reading the material, you're doing the journaling, you're doing some stuff. But when the insight comes, it's like the sprout that just kind of comes out of the ground and you just know it. You just know it. And it's not, well, but is it that or that or that or that or that? You don't have to make an intellectual decision. That's the whole point. Because
You
if I
squeeze your brain
Yeah, yeah.
to like pop out the answer.
or convince yourself, because that's confabulation. That's just making something up. That's the the ego trying to do the job of kind of like the whole self. So there is a part, and really, so what do you do rather than like really almost certainly, if you're watching this video, if you're involved in, I mean, is there anyone who doesn't analyze enough, who knows about GN? I don't think we've ever met anyone like, you need to analyze more. It's almost always more noticing how you're relating to what you do know. It's not what you don't know. It's how you're relating to, responding to, interacting with what you do know. It's how you're reacting to what you have noticed, not what you haven't noticed yet. It's so subtle. You know what I mean? And we get kind of addicted to knowledge and information, whether it's another book, or whether it's a memory from our past, or whether it's some kind of new idea. We think that's what we're missing, when very often it's just a little bit more awareness. How specifically do I respond or react when this stuff comes up? And so let me just kind of read through here. So she feels like her brain's trying to help her, which is, I think that's really great. So her brain's not working against her. Her brain is responding to a demand that she's placing upon it. Do you see what I'm saying? She's kind of scanning and analyzing where all this stuff is coming from, and her brain says, oh boy, you want possible explanations for traumas? Well, here's a trauma that happened. There's a trauma that happened. It's like Oprah. You have a trauma, you get a trauma, So it starts proffering up. It's trying to help. The question is, what kind of information are we requesting? What kind of questions are we asking? Now, see, she's had two traumatic births, and she now relives that moment. So and it sounds like this reliving, this kind of re-experiencing has started since she was doing that analyzing. And so I think the first and most important thing I would say would be, because that sounds like that's kind of where the stuff is coming from, stop analyzing. Let's do a moratorium on analysis. You are way ahead of 99.9% of the population in terms of being aware of a connection between things. I would stop here. If you have a symptom, if you have an issue going on, I would look up, what, according to GNM, what is the conflict associated with this symptom? It's a territorial anger. It's a indigestible morsel. It's a this, it's a that. And I would just go, that's interesting. That's interesting. And I'd leave it. I just, isn't that interesting? And I would go about my day, and I would just kind of observe myself throughout that day. And when you kind of like stop looking at that subject, something's going to come up that's relevant. You're going to, what you do is you introduce into your consciousness the elements of epiphany, which is to say, you use this principle, this outline to say, according to this school of thought, what does the fact that I'm having this symptom, what would be consistent? What would be that personal experience? Oh, it would be this type of negative experience. And then you just say, well, which one was it of mine? When did that happen? Oh, blah, 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 blah. You don't do that. You go wash the dishes. You know what I'm saying? You go observe your experience. You go watch what you're doing now. You back off. It's kind of like, when you're using like walkie-talkies, you push the button and you talk. You have to let go of the button to kind of receive a response. And a lot of the time, that's what needs to happen, is that there's just this kind of relaxation, that kind of curious, non-judgmental watching. Now this is really interesting. When you aren't down the rabbit hole trying to suss out exactly what trauma could be giving rise to this, and I understand you have these things going on in your body, it hurts, it's interfering with your life, you want to fix it right now. But your experience of wanting to fix it, I have to, I must, I don't have time, you don't understand, I'm under the gun, I'm in trouble, I can't keep going, my job, my kids, my family, I don't know how much longer I can take, Notice that experience that you're creating right here and right now. That experience is very often the source of a lot of the problems. And very often it is the blockage to that realization, that sensation of that panic, that judging yourself and all of that. If you can kind of let that go and just kind of let the information just kind of percolate, And then when you're not freaking out, looking into the past so much, you can observe what you're thinking and feeling and doing right here and right now. Because right now is where the action is. And I guarantee you that there are these conflicts, I don't believe, are isolated incidents. I think that we have a tendency to experience our world and our reality in certain ways. I can speculate about what might have happened to me at some point in the past for years and create a very kind of negative, powerless experience doing that. Or I can get some idea of some kind of a connection. And then I can watch what I'm doing right here and right now and notice how I'm relating to my life as it exists. And I don't have to speculate. It's right in front of me to the extent that I'm aware. And those things tend to come together in a way where the past proffers the relevant information to you. The brain says, or you see yourself doing something right now and it reminds you of something you used to do or something that you saw someone else do. And that really forms the connection that you need.
That's so good. And what Lorna says here is great. She goes, now that I know what the conflict is, I want to try to make sure I do everything perfect to heal, when trying to be perfect has contributed to the issue. That's exactly what we're talking about. So your pattern of, and this is very common. We've found with tons of people who are learning GNM. They, basically you've got a mind factory, and any like piece of information, it's like a piece of wood. It's like your factory does one thing with the wood once it comes inside, and you carve it into the same thing that the same way you always have interacted with information. Is now I have to do this perfect, or how can I screw this up, or am I screwing this up right now? And so that realization that you're having, just noticing that is enormously helpful, because then you can say, this pattern of interaction is part of what caused this biological conflict to begin with. This is where I need to go to work. This is where, I need to chill out. And that's what I find with a lot of the people that I work with one-on-one. It's like, it's more chilling out. It's more of this kind of like non-judgmental observation, letting things come to you. It's like, and I understand what that's like, that desire to fix things, that desire to have answers, to concretely just like put things together, and that desire just to just squeeze your mind until it works. And but that's the thing, is like when you're looking for information, even if you're like looking for memories, it's the same kind of thing. Like if you're looking for an answer, have you ever tried to it's on the tip of my tongue? What is it? What is it? What is it? And then when you're not thinking about it at all, it just descends into your mind. You're like, it was that. And that is how a lot of these answers will come to you. A lot of the keys to resolving your conflict, their intuition, they're given to you by like infinite intelligence. Your subconscious mind, it doesn't work when it's under pressure like that. It needs to, be in this relaxed state. And obviously that is, when you are stressing about stress and worrying about worry, and you're kind of chasing your tail in these really negative states, that's when you need to recognize, what? This is conflict right here, right now. And that's the thing, and that's what matters more than anything that happened to you 20 years ago or 5 years ago or 5 months ago. What matters most of all is what you're doing right here and right now. And so you could do archaeology, and you could try to dig up all the things that happened to you in your past, or do hypnosis and remember, all these repressed memories, or you can notice what you're doing right here and right now. And there will always be threads that you can pull that will lead you back to something. And maybe there's some emotional work that needs to happen around that something, some releasing. But most importantly, and the reason releasing that is a good thing, is because it helps you reorient yourself to all that is. Reorient your perception, your perspective. And that's the power of all of this awareness work, is just noticing. And you see more and more and more, and you say, this thing that happened to me then is causing me to have issues now. I was cheated on. Now I have trust issues. I resolve the fact I was cheated on, I forgive the person, I let it go, whatever. I still have to look at how that impacted my perception of my relationships, of, everything and everyone I interact with. And so that's really the biggest work, is like that noticing. And so that's why really everything that we do as far as coaching and guiding people is helping you to engineer those aha moments, those moments of, there it is right there. And I just saw myself do it. I just saw myself tell that story. And that's the story. That's the story that is causing me to continually feel powerless or angry, or, I can't accept this, or resistance. And that's really, the most helpful advice that we can give for this type of situation, and really all situations regarding something you're trying to resolve.
And that capacity, by the way, to notice, man, this thing, I feel like, what was it? I need to control it. I need to fix it. What was the
perfect?
I need to do everything perfect. I need to do a perfect job of resolving all the conflicts that have arisen as a result of my feeling like I had to do perfect back then. That's like an awareness thing. So if you see yourself doing that, like as you're doing it, and you say, this is, because when you're in that course of action, when you're in that state of consciousness, when you are doing that kind of analysis or that attempt to be perfect, whatever that thinks and feels and behaves like for you, it's very persuasive. It feels like the thing to do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. And so what's your capacity to kind of be immersed in that particular habitual response and to recognize it for what it is and to say, yeah, this isn't serving me. You don't have to force yourself to stop. In fact, it's much better if you just kind of, because it's so automated, it's so automatic, it's just kind of like almost like a boulder rolling down a hill. Eventually, it will lose momentum. The best thing that I can do is watch and see exactly how it got started rolling in the first place. And this is a cool thing too, if something in my past is relevant to my present, health, enjoyment of life, relationships, whatever, it has to enter into my current experience by way of the present, which is to say there have to be evidences, there have to be clues, there have to be mental, emotional, and behavioral manifestations of whatever that past event is right here and right now. And if I'm sitting here and right now, intellectualizing and analyzing and painting a picture or telling a story or doing kind of like, well, based on this, I'd say probably this and then that. No, that's convincing and that's consistent with that psychology book that I read. And this personal growth person says this. And Steve and Melissa have said that blah, 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 blah. What am I not doing? I'm not noticing what I'm doing right here and right now. I'm speculating about something rather than observing what's objectively, empirically, definitely true. That's that power of awareness, and it's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to see myself trying to be perfect. And then I say, gosh, I'm trying to be perfect about resolving conflicts that have occurred as a result of trying to be perfect. I now need to be perfect in my stopping myself from trying to be perfect to resolve conflicts that resulted from trying to be perfect. Can you keep, rather than trying to control what you're doing, let the doing occur, let the thinking, let the feeling, let the acting happen. And rather than in trying to push against that, at best you're going to grind it to a halt, like two trains pushing against each other. What you do is you just observe. It is not necessary for you to be thinking, feeling, doing anything other than what you're thinking, feeling, and doing at a given moment in time. It's not necessary for your habits to be other than they are. It's not necessary for your inclinations to be other than they are. It's not necessary for your abilities to be other than they are in order for you to get better. What is necessary is awareness. This is the necessary and sufficient ingredient for positive change. If you can, and the first skill is opening your eyes, and the second skill is not breaking eye contact. It's like you get in a staring contest with what doesn't serve you. You see yourself doing it, and it's staring you down, and it seems so silly, and it seems so unpleasant, and you're so eager to take a violent approach with yourself or a coercive approach with yourself or a forceful approach with yourself or a willpower. Those are all methods for going unconscious. Those are all methods for perpetuating the cycle that you're currently dissolving by way of observation. They are all, and they feel like the right thing to do. They feel like the thing you have to do. It's like if you've been at the playground, if you have children, or even if you're watching a child, or there's even a child that you don't even know, and you're just at the playground, and you see a child fall down and hurt themselves. And they're not seriously injured, but they're making a big display. They're upset. You want to just run over to them. You just want to run over to them and pick them up and basically make it so that just didn't happen. But you know how sometimes the best thing that you can do is keep an eye on them and make sure they're okay. Let them self-soothe. Let them stand up. Let them get their bearings. See what they'll do if they have a chance to do something for themselves. You know what I'm saying? Versus that, like never giving them a chance to, get their bearings or collect themselves or whatever. It's kind of like that. It's like you're watching yourself do the stuff that doesn't work, and you say, God, I've got to force myself to stop. But the only reason that you're doing things that don't work is because they're habits that have formed outside of awareness. So when I'm watching and I'm seeing things that I feel like I need to intercede in, I'm actually doing, in the watching, I am doing the thing that will change those activities, those things that aren't serving me. And it's like, if I see something happening in my present moment, if there's something in my past that's relevant, right? It is playing out. It is manifesting. It is occurring. It is affecting my experience right here and right now. If I observe, I didn't spend a lot of time speculating about my dad's influence on me and my stepmom's influence on me, and maybe when my parents got divorced, I decided, blah, blah, blah. No, I watched right here and right now. I watched my treatment of Melissa. I watched my experience of Melissa. I watched what I said to myself. Where did that come from? What did I just made a, she's just this, she's just that. And I said, where have I heard that before? Well, my dad told me that. My dad said that to me he didn't say it to me. He just said it, and I was sitting next to him in the car. He just said it to nobody, kind of like his dad probably said it to nobody around him. And so that was the thing that, to me, I don't really speculate about it. It was like, whoa, that's certainly not serving me. I think I probably know where that came from in my past, but I know it's not. And it was the seeing that it wasn't working for me right now. It was listen, I don't have to be Einstein to figure out that thinking that thought probably isn't going to help me down the line. Filtering information in that way, telling myself that thing, assigning that meaning to the situation, and I don't know what to do instead yet. I don't know, but here's the thing. I know what I am doing now isn't working. That is enough for me to say, I'm not going to do that anymore. And sometimes that means just don't do anything. Just kick back and watch yourself do what doesn't work. And just don't do what doesn't work in response to seeing yourself doing what doesn't work. Simply just watch and say, you know what? Listen, brain, what our habitual reactions are not good enough anymore. I'm not going to put my whole self into it. We can play it out if you want to. You can proffer those thoughts if you want to. You can create those feelings if you want. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to lean into it. I'm not going to amplify it. I'm not going to fight against it and make it perpetuate and become stronger. You need to give me something better to work with. And that willingness to not act until an action worth taking manifests itself in your awareness, that inclination or that willingness to just hold back and kind of do the poker face. It's like in a negotiation, and the other person, you're just waiting. It's sort of like whoever speaks first loses. Your willingness just to wait until something better, a better thought comes or whatever. Don't just take the rotten fruit that habit is offering you. Stand back and say, I'm not doing that. Sorry. No, I'm not going to take it. I need something better. I need something better. You know what your brain will do? Just like when you were asking yourself, what's the trauma? What's the conflict? What's the reason? What's the bad thing that happened? If you look at your current situation, you say, okay, given this, what do I want? Okay, given this, what do I want? Given the fact, because, if I'm kind of having these flashbacks, okay, given this, what do I want? Constant pivoting, constant redirection, because a lot of people have a filter which says, what I don't want. Oh my gosh, I am having this symptom. I don't want to have that. What's probably coming from something in my past, it's coming from something emotional. Well, I don't want to respond negatively to that. I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to keep it going. I don't. You're really getting well practiced at just looking at whatever's happening in your head or in your body or in your experience or things from your past. Oh boy, I'm having a really vivid flashback here. Okay, given the fact that I'm having that, what do I want? Most basically, most big picture, I want to respond resourcefully to the fact that this is happening. So few people do themselves the favor, give themselves the advantage of just allowing what's happening in the moment and for the moment. Oh my gosh, this terrible thing's happening. Okay, given that, what do you want? Well, I know I always want to respond resourcefully, because that means responding in a way that creates more of what I want and less of what I don't. I'm freaking out. I'm a mess. I'm in pain. What do I want to do? Well, I know I want to respond resourcefully. Okay, given this, what do I want? That's a very good way of responding resourcefully. I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to perpetuate it. I don't want to emotionally resist and suffer over it. I want to respond in a way that's consistent with creating more of what I want. Probably not beating myself up. When you don't know what to do, you just watch. With detachment, with non-judgmental, you just witness with curiosity. You say to yourself, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? That's interesting. Oh man, that flashback was really vivid. I wonder, this person they're so close. If we can systemize this person's insights and resourceful responses, they'll be there in no time, because they're already saying, my brain is trying to help me. My brain's trying to help me. It's not fighting me. It's not trying to sabotage me. It's not out to get me. It's trying to help me. But it's kind of like, I'm only trying to help you. It's like, well, what it's doing though is kind of freaking me out a little bit and probably setting me up to be even more conflicted. What if that person starts saying, okay, given this, what do I want? Okay, given this, what do I want? And it's almost like, if you interact with your spouse long enough, eventually you'll go, hey dear, hey honey, and they'll just say, it's in the drawer, it's on the counter, it's in the, because they just know. Eventually what will start happening is that your brain will just start giving you things that you want. It'll just start, because it's like, oh geez, here she is again. What do you want? Here's what you want. Here's something that you want. Here's a positive thought. Here's something resourceful. Here's a way you can respond. Here's a meaning you can assign. And every bit as easily and as naturally as we are calibrated in this time to generate thoughts and feelings and behaviors and experiences that don't serve us, that same apparatus, when you kind of retool it, it generates things that you do want. But it's very much a right here and right now, and it takes a lot to be there. It takes a lot to get there. But once you're there, the smallest little, it's like, the CEO with a stroke of a pen can change the lives of hundreds of people, or can change the behaviors of a bunch of people. When you're at the bottom, you could work 24 hours a day, exhausting yourself physically and mentally, and you wouldn't affect the behaviors of very many people at all. But sort of as you ascend and as you get up to that present moment, so the further I am back in the past, the lower I am in the totem pole of the company, of the corporation, the less sway, the less influence I have. Ironically, the more I get into the present moment, which is to say, what is my right now response to the fact that I'm aware of something I did a micro millisecond ago, the more I can hang out right there and say, okay, given that, what do I want? Stay fresh, stay new, stay current, stay relevant in my responses, the more powerful my responses tend to be. And it becomes, I mean, it's easy. It's just this kind of like, I've been referencing this a lot. There's an interesting passage and some reference in the Bible where it's the king who sits upon his throne and scatters evil with his eye. And I was like, that sounds like awareness to me. Sits upon his throne, not runs around like a maniac trying to make everyone do the right thing. Sits upon his throne and scatters evil, which is that you can't do what doesn't serve you and do it with awareness. I scatter that which does not serve me, those thoughts, feelings, behaviors. I scatter those meanings. I get rid of them. I dissipate them. I dissolve them. I just get them out of my life. By what? With my eye. What does that mean? Well, I just look at them. And that awareness, you know what I'm saying, causes those things just to vanish. I thought that's a really interesting kind of passage, and it really gets at what it is. So you sit upon your throne, which is to say, don't get down in the muck. Don't go down into the rabbit holes. Don't chase, don't fight, don't resist, don't do any of those things. You sit upon that awareness. You sit up in your mind. You sit up in that high place where you've really just like, things fine, it's cool. My job is just to respond resourcefully to whatever is true, not to make it something other than it is right now, but it's to create what can be by responding resourcefully to what is. It's to look at whatever I'm looking at, whatever has my attention, and say, okay, given this, what do I want? That's it. And follow the responses that come from there. That's a very powerful thing, and I'd be interested to hear from anyone who's watching this, but in particular the questioner. What is it like after you've played with this for a week or two? Do you feel your way into a new sort of sensation of where you are in terms of resolving this stuff?
Well, it looks like it's already helped Lorna. She says, you guys just took the pressure off me. I totally get it. So awesome. It's all worth it. That realization, those connections are going to serve you so much in this whole process because once you learn GNM, and once you kind of like solve your major conflict, it's not over. Life still goes on. There's still going to be other stuff. And once you see these connections, you don't unsee them, and you continually learn and you adapt better to your environment and to your life. And it's just kind of, that's why, we found that, resolving your conflicts is improving everything about your life. So we're really, really glad that you had that realization tonight. If you want more systematic awareness work, we just finished an awareness challenge, so that's not available anymore. But in Resolve, there is a 5-day specific mindset of healing awareness challenge that, when you're in Resolve, there are tons and tons of videos in there. Every single module goes through, our systematic approach for deconstructing and understanding a conflict. And there's over 12 modules in there currently. And when you sign up for Resolve, you get access to all of it currently. We're in the process of breaking it up so that you can buy individual modules. But right now, when you purchase a monthly membership, you just get access to all of it. And a great place to start is the Mindset of Healing Awareness Challenge, because it kind of walks you through systematically the process of growing and working this awareness muscle, this ability to watch from this non-judgmental place everything that's going on, in your thoughts and your feelings, how you're relating to your past and your present, your physical symptoms, which is so huge. How you respond to your physical symptoms is so important, because that is what determines whether or not you stay in a hanging healing, or if you get on with this program, Resolve permanently, and allow the body to finish up the biological program so that you can get back to normal homeostasis. So many people, they get in a conflict and they just don't get out of it because they have not learned or figured out how to, or understood the importance of responding resourcefully to their symptoms that are like, but look here, this is such a big deal. And we make the biggest deal about the symptoms, which causes the conflict all over again. So the Resolve program is awesome for helping you just to notice and start to see and start to make these connections, and just putting these ideas in your mind, just, low key, no big pressure. You don't have to go in and listen to every video and study and do all the work. It's just like, how can I put more of these ideas on my psychic radar? How can I absorb a little bit more? How can I see a little more today? How can I make a few more, like allow my mind to offer up more connections so that I can live in a way that is more peaceful, more fun, more relaxed? How can I enjoy myself more, even in the face of pretty intense symptoms? We have people in Resolve that are dealing with some pretty intense health stuff, but have found a way through using the material to be happier than they've ever been in their whole life because they're using the tools. And so that's going to serve them getting out of this, pretty intense health situation that they're in, and then to live better than they've ever lived before, more lighthearted, more fun, better relationships. And so it's pretty awesome. Resolve has so much good stuff in it. And so if you're interested, I'll put the link in the thing so you can check out what's in there. So
there's a lot of good stuff in it. But again, it's one of those things. How do I relate to information? Sometimes people get in there and they're overwhelmed because they think they have to consume it all in one sitting or whatever. It's not all there because you have to consume it all. It's all there so that you can kind of pick and you can go, oh, that's interesting, and oh, that's interesting. Just read 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and then go out and create a new experience with it, or think about your situation with that in mind. One last just thing about awareness is that once you have a feel for what it is that we're asking you to do and what awareness is all about, like once you understand, oh, it's that, it's very easy. It's not about efforting. But it's a nuanced and it's a very subtle thing. It's simple, but it's subtle. And I think a lot of the time people kind of get exhausted because they try really hard, but they're trying something that doesn't really work. And they think maybe more effort will make what doesn't work. And that's almost never true. It's almost shift to something different. It's like, how can I ease up? It's attention minus effort. If you wanted to really kind of get an idea about what awareness is, take away the effort, just notice, just pay attention to what's happening and going on. And when you, so if you're having a hard time, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're not strong enough, or that you don't have the willpower, or you're not smart enough, or that it's not possible for you? No. Probably we said to go through a particular door and we didn't do a good job communicating, or maybe you didn't quite hear us right. And so you're trying to go through a door that wasn't the one we were referring to, and it's locked and boarded up from the other side, and nobody could get through there, even if they had like a battering ram. We were talking about the door next to it. Very often it's kind of like, I thought that I was doing awareness, but I was actually really analyzing super hard. Well, shifting that and trying that other thing, and kind of like, can I make this even easier? What if it was even easier than this? It takes a lot of doing to get used to allowing things to be as easy as they can be. So yeah, just kind of like give that a try. Yeah. So thank you guys for watching. Let us know if you have any other questions. If you need anything, please reach out. And I think that'll be it for tonight. Have a good one. Bye.